I'm here on the lower river, if I can find my place on the camera, and joining you all who are watching on the cams as we witnessed a really heartbreaking event this afternoon. Bear 803, who has had a litter before, came back with 3 spring cubs, and one of them apparently was very sick this afternoon, and you guys noticed. And while Mike Fitz and I were on a text chat, you called attention to it. The cub couldn't keep up with its siblings and its mom, and just waited on the downriver island. And mom kept coming back with the cubs, and I fear that the cub is gone. The cubs have a hard life, and it's very hard for them to survive their first year. We don't know what happened. We can't intervene unless something happened that was caused by us. You know, with 854 Divot, when she had a wolf snare around her neck, that we intervened for that and saved her. But there's no way that we could go in and save that cub. We don't know if it had a virus, if it ate something that hurt it. And right now I'm watching, and the mother bear 803 and her cubs are running back to the island, and I'm going to see if I can turn my computer around so you can see that. But you were bearing witness to the life of a bear here at Brooks River. It ain't easy, and these are very resilient animals, and sometimes we have great stories like 505's lone yearling number 63 who got reunited with its family, and sometimes see sad stories. Mike, I see that you're on. I'm going to turn my camera on back around, and maybe you have some comments for us.
Well, Naomi, I wanted to jump online and try to answer as many questions that the audience might have about the situation that's going on. I mean, there's not a whole lot that we know at this point. One of the things that I would like to speak about is just actually how tough bears are, even young cubs. You know, we don't know for sure exactly what's happening with the animal. We don't know if it's, I mean, the little bit that I was able to see, I was quite busy when things were going down earlier, but the little bit I was able to see suggests that it could have been ill or something like that. But that doesn't mean it won't pull through or it's not still kicking, so to speak, on the island. You know, with its mother coming back and forth consistently, that suggests that she's still checking on it. She's, you know, hasn't given up, you know, quite given up hope yet that it is still alive. You know, we see bears pulling through, you know, actually some really egregious injuries from time to time. My first summer at Brooks River, one of the very first memories I have of a bear actually is a bear coming down to the falls with a broken jawbone. You could see the I think the right side of his jaw just hanging loose. I mean, it had snapped like right in the middle, and his canine teeth, or his canine tooth on one side, and some of his incisors were just hanging down, and he just gummed the fish. He just he got by as best he could, and he came back for the next few years after that. So, you know, based on some of those instances, when we see sick or injured cubs, I think, you know, they still possess those same characteristics, although they don't have the body mass, they don't have the energy reserves of an adult. So that's maybe a disadvantage in their when they encounter these situations or when they experience these situations.
Yeah, Mike, she's going back and forth constantly. Right now she's leaving the island with her 2 cubs. Initially, when I walked out here and I left you alone in the chat, I did see that cub on the edge of that island. And the thing that makes me a little sad and suspicious is that she's searched around that island so much. And we haven't seen it. But, you know, there's always hope. Bears continuously give us hope. 505 sick cub that came back. And the other thing I wanted to say about this is that quite astonished how dedicated a sow is to its cubs. I mean, I think she's going to be coming back and forth to that island for quite some time until she knows where that cub is. Mike, you want to take over a bit more, and any more comments and stories?
Yeah, they don't often give up. I think that's a good point. Mother bears invest a lot in the care of their offspring. She invested a tremendous amount of energy over the winter just to get them out of the den, to give birth to them, nurse them through the wintertime, get them to Brooks River. So it's a tremendous investment for her. Also, with bears are smart enough that I also do believe, although it's difficult to really measure this, on a human level, but I do believe that they also are smart enough that they can experience emotion. We know that our domestic dogs experience emotion. Anybody who's ever had a pet really can't deny that. I mean, we see it in our own animals, and with bears experiencing, probably having cognitive skills at a similar level, I bet that bears experience emotion as well. So that could play a role too in how she's experiencing this situation. Of course, eventually she's going to have to look out for her surviving cubs, and so she's in a tough spot. How long can she wait before she has to focus on them? Thankfully, though, at this time of the year, there's a lot of fish in Brooks River, so that's an advantage that they have. Go ahead, Naomi.
No, I was going to say is that she has been calling out, and her cubs quite clear what's going on, and they've kind of been hanging on to her as she is swimming about. She, she got a little angry with them, because she's got something else on her mind, and clearly she's torn. She's looking at her two cubs, but she's looking around for that other cub, um, and it really speaks to what it takes to be a sow with cubs. I mean, under normal, great circumstances, it's very difficult. There are other bears now here in the lower river. She's got to watch out for them to make sure that her cubs are safe around those. There are people above her who should not be above her, and if I could get someone to help me move those people away from her. So anyway, she's got it tough. Continue, Mike. I'm going to try and get some of those people off the middle of the.
Sure thing. While Naomi is attending to some of the public there, I know there's a lot of people that maybe are just tuning in right now, so I'm going to introduce myself more formally. My name is Mike Fitz with Explore.org. I'm a resident naturalist with Explore.org. I'm also a former park ranger at Katmai National Park. And joining me on the screen is Naomi Boak, Brooks River right now. And so she's kind of our eyes and ears right there. We also have the webcams, of course, providing a different perspective. What we're looking at right now is, not too long ago, maybe about an hour or so ago, the lower river camera caught sight of a mother bear and her three cubs, and one of the cubs tended to be, or looked like it was ill or struggling to keep up with mother. So we don't really know why, but we're here to try to answer your questions as best we can about the situation. I know a lot of people are very curious about whether or not the NPS would intervene, that sort of thing, Naomi. And I know there's some very helpful moderators and staff with Explore.org that are going to forward us a lot of those questions. So if you're in the chat right now, or you're watching on the live chat channel, you can post those questions down below, and we'll do our best to try to answer as many of those as we can. Naomi, one of the questions that actually just kind of came up real quickly that I saw from our Bearcam moderators was somebody was wondering if anyone would actually take a boat to go out and check. Can you talk about a little bit of the logistics of utilizing boats in Brooks River? It could give us a different perspective.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little difficult because there are so many bears in the river right now, and we don't want to interfere with what's going on with all the bears fishing, and it's a little dangerous. We I think we'd advise against putting a boat out there right now with so many bears fishing, but I also saw the question, if the cub is out there, would rangers go and get the remains? And I would say probably yes, because we want to know what happened to the cub. So if it is out there, yes, they will go out. And I keep seeing people where they should, near bears. So in another instance, last year when 505's sick cub we thought was dead, Ranger Michael went out into the marsh to get what he thought be a dead cub, but he found a cub that was getting better. So yes, Park Service will go out and try and find the cub at a safe moment.
Yeah, we actually know so little about non-traumatic death in bear cubs in Katmai that it's an unfortunate research opportunity, but it's a research opportunity nonetheless. And that's why, last year Ranger Michael went out looking for that other bear. It also, there was a situation somewhat similar to this that happened in 2015. We had a cub die of what turned out to be canine adenovirus at the lower river, very close to where Naomi is standing right now. Naomi, you probably remember watching that on the cams, I think, from that time. And that happened over several days. It was in October. Very few staff were around. We didn't know what's wrong with the cub, but it basically walked to a spot on the road. Long story short, collapsed and it never got back up. After we knew that the cub was dead, rangers came to the river. They collected it. They sent it off to the National Wildlife Health Center in Wisconsin, I believe, and a staff pathologist did a necropsy on it and was able to determine that it died of canine adenovirus. And we know that that disease is probably endemic within the Alaska Peninsula, and it's also very prevalent on Kodiak Island as well. So bears get exposed to it from time to time. In dogs, it seems like, from what I've read, younger dogs have a lower survival rate with that disease than older dogs. So if you're a puppy, for instance, and you get it, it's bad news, more bad news than it would be if you're an adult. We don't know, though, if that's the same in brown bears. Still a lot of questions regarding disease in wild bears.
But Mike, last a researcher who had done research on canine and bears here told us in his research paper that young bears, cubs, have a much harder time with that virus, and it is frequently lethal for them, whereas older bears tend to survive it. And
Okay.
And so yeah, so he did a paper and published it last year. And I'm getting white socks in my mouth. So bears,
that's one of the
young face. Yeah. Bears, young bears face a lot of challenges in order to grow up. It's not easy.
And so someone else was wondering, why didn't 803 let her sick cub ride on her back? And maybe we should, before we get to that question, I want to get to that question, but we should introduce this mother. We don't know a whole lot about her. She doesn't have a nickname. She's just numbered number 803. So she was identified in 2017, if I remember correctly. And she was identified as, I think, a young adult at the time. So as far as we know, this is her first known litter, and that's not uncommon, for us to not know a whole lot about the brown bears on the river. There is an estimated probably about 2,200 bears in Katmai National Park, at least at the last population estimate that was done over 10 years ago now. And we have bears immigrating to Brooks River and bears emigrating out of the Brooks River area all the time. Each summer we can end up seeing brand new adult bears that we have never seen before, fully mature animals that they had been making a living somewhere else, and then all of a sudden they show up at Brooks River and decide to make this part of their home. So whether 803 had prior experienced Brooks River and we just didn't recognize her, or she was a new arrival. We really don't know for sure. But as far as we know, I think this is her first litter. But why didn't she let her her cub ride on her back? I don't know. I think that's usually a decision that the cubs make, and maybe mother tolerates that. Naomi, you can chime in if you have some other ideas on that. But yeah, a lot of times when cubs want to ride on backs of mom, they have to kind of have the energy to do it, and it didn't seem like this cub really had that energy to get up.
I don't think it had the energy. I think that it was just standing there. And she, afterwards, I don't know how many the cam viewers saw, but the other cubs were riding on her back. So it's not that she's a sow that's averse to having cubs ride on her back, but I think that one just didn't have the strength. It didn't want to go into the water at all. It was just standing there. Something was very wrong with that cub.
And Naomi, do you want to recap? I know. Yeah, we have several more questions. I think the next one in the queue actually was somebody was wondering if you could just recap what happened and what you have seen, since we have a lot of new people tuning into the chat right now.
Okay, I'm gonna hope that gator goes away so that you can hear me clearly. About an hour ago, when Mike and I were in the text answering your questions, you cam viewers alerted us to the fact that 803, a sow with 3 spring cubs, one of her cubs was not doing well. It was not keeping up with the rest. So I went on to look at the lower river cam and saw that cub was not following its mother and siblings into the water, would not swim. It was just standing there and didn't move. So clearly something was wrong. I asked one of the bear management rangers to go out and check on it, and he confirmed that that's what was going on. And so I'm out here to look, and what I saw was that cub at the very edge of the downriver side of that downriver island, and then I couldn't see it. And mother and the 2 other cubs have been returning back and forth. She was clearly distressed, looking at cub, calling out. The siblings are calling out too. They don't know what mom is doing. It looks like she's coming back again. She had gone into the woods on the south side of the bridge, and now she's coming back again. So cubs have a very tough life. It's hard to survive that first year. Mike, what are the statistics for survival of a spring cub?
Yeah, they're not actually very high. In Katmai, we don't have specific statistics for Brooks River. But there was a study done on the Pacific coast of Katmai National Park after the Exxon Valdez oil spill. So really in the early to mid 1990s. And that study ended up finding that mortality in first year cubs was as high as 66%. So 2 out of 3 cubs didn't survive their first year. At Brooks River, it seems like the numbers are better than that. And certainly having a lot of fish around helps quite a bit. But the population of bears in Katmai is also thought to be at its carrying capacity. So still a lot, even though there might be a lot of food, there's still a lot of competition for space and access to get at that food itself. And so, yeah, like Naomi was saying, cubs do face a lot of challenges in their young life. When we watch them on the cameras, we see that they're very playful and curious and energetic creatures, but that playfulness and their cuteness often does mask a lot of the harsh realities that they face.
We also don't know how many cubs are lost on the way here, right? I mean, it's a long journey without much food except for mother's milk from where they den to get down here. And you'll notice that mothers with spring cubs end up coming here later than most other bears because the journey takes longer when you've got these little things straggling behind you. So when bear 435 Holly shows up with one spring cub, we don't know, did she have another and lose it on the way? Those are one of the things that we will never know. But I think I'm going to reiterate the fact that you guys are bearing witness to a story that is not often seen by human beings about life and survival brown bears around here. So it's difficult to watch, but important to watch, and know that here in the national parks, we interfere unless it's something that we caused as human beings, like when 8x4 Divot had a wolf snare around her neck. The park rangers found her, they sedated her, and they removed that wolf snare, and she's back this spring cubs. So when we can do it and it's appropriate, we will, but sometimes nature does what nature does, and sometimes that's a happy ending and sometimes it's not. So do we have more questions, Mike?
We do. The kind of the next one that we had in our queue here is somebody was wondering about when a necropsy is done on one of the bears, do the rangers have to get permission from the National Park Service to have one done? And to collect any sort of wild animal in national parks, when I was a ranger, you had to have permission from the supervisory team in the park generally to collect even a dead animal. So if I found like a bear cub out in the park, I couldn't just like put it in a bag and take it home to worry about zoonotic diseases. And I think that's something that is conscious in everyone's mind right now with COVID-19, and that probably jumping into humans from wildlife and people being in close contact with wildlife. So we have to be very careful with that. There are parasites that can infect humans that live in bears, that sort of thing. So yeah, there's a lot of steps that have to be taken to make sure that you're keeping yourself safe and that you're doing everything, you're crossing all your T's and dotting all your I's when you want to look at the, collect those animals for study. And Naomi, we're watching the lower river camera right now on our screen. I'm not sure if you can see that or not, but is that number 803 that's fishing in the river, or those a couple of other bears?
It's a couple other bears. I think that's
Okay.
a subadult over there. I'm told by my companion here that he's seeing 803 go into camp. I can't quite tell if that's her or if that's 854 going into camp.
Okay.
But no, these
the next
are
question we had. Yeah. Okay. Well, I just wanted to make sure my screen is a little pixelated. I don't want to end up confusing anything. The next question that we had in the queue, somebody was wondering, when will we be able to learn the results of a necropsy if that happens? With 451 and her dead cub in 2015, we learned, not that long after the necropsy was done. So the staff pathologist, Susan Knowles, with the National Wildlife Health Center, she ended up sending a preliminary report to the park, really within a couple of weeks or so. I think maybe even less after she did the necropsy. So she types that up really quickly. At the time, we ended up releasing, much of what we could from out of that report. So, if worse came to worse, and the cub did die, and it was collected and sent off for analysis, then I think the audience would know, the results of that fairly shortly. Naomi, I'm going to throw this question to you if I can. Go ahead.
No, I was just say it depends on what lab we send it to as well, right?
Right. It may not go to that lab in Wisconsin. It could go to the state wildlife veterinarian in Alaska. So so they might have a different procedure. So that's something else to keep in mind. But I do want to throw this question to you, Naomi. Can the virus that we talked about, that canine adenovirus, can that be transferred from wolves to bears?
From wolves to bears, I don't know. That's a really good question. Are we going to blame that wolf on the lip for this?
No,
I don't
I don't. I
know.
don't
We
think
do.
so. I was wondering
I
if you had read anything about that.
No, I haven't. We do know that it is transmitted from bear to bear, and I saw that there was a question: is there a possibility that the other cubs, if the cub had a virus, could the other cubs have gotten it? And it's possible. But we don't know. We don't know what's happened to that cub. We don't know if it, it ate something that gave it a real problem and that it couldn't swim, that maybe it was struggling physically. It wasn't physically as strong as some of the other cubs. We just don't know at this point.
Right. There's so much that we know. It could be birth defect. Could have been something that it ate. Could have been another pathogen. Could have been uh, a parasite or something like that that's causing it to be ill. The research that I had, or the reading that I have done on canine adenovirus, it can be prevalent in this population of bears and on Kodiak Island. But bears, they go through a quarantine each year. We're all familiar with quarantines right now due to the pandemic. Bears do that every year when they go into their dens. So the virus itself, only canine adenovirus, it only lives in an animal, like, or in a bear for like a few months or something like that, or a few weeks. I can't remember specifically. But when bears go into the den, they're not eating, they're not drinking. So their immune system is taking care of anything that they're contacting, and they come out of the dens basically free of that virus. They may still harbor some antibodies for it, but if they contracted it, it's not a factor for them anymore. So the reservoir for that virus in the ecosystem is canines. So foxes, wolves, coyotes. There are a few coyotes even in Katmai National Park. Far more wolves probably in the area than coyotes. But yeah, and it's transferred through bodily fluids. So a bear can contract it in the springtime if it comes in contact with bodily fluids of another animal. So that's kind of how it spreads throughout the ecosystem.
I would also add, since you all have watched what happened here this afternoon, is to keep watching and keep track of what Bear 803 does. I mean, she has moved on. She's trying to take care of the two spring cubs that she has. And she can't forget about that. They won't let her forget about that. They've been complaining for the last 2 hours. So I think that's a continuation of the story. Story doesn't end here. Even if we may see that cub again, we may not. But even if we don't, the story doesn't end, because 803 has a continuing story with her other two cubs.
Naomi, you mentioned that you had heard the cubs making noises. You mentioned it in a comment, maybe about an hour ago or so. You heard the cubs making noises. Can you just one of those bawling noises that they make when they were hungry, or was it more of a sign of stress in the cubs?
It was kind of a bawling noise, because
Okay.
I think I mean, it was bawling, but I think stressful. I mean, it didn't look like they were asking mom for food. Mom was calling out too. She was crying as
Okay.
well. So I think they were stressed because mom was stressed. I mean, that's a typical thing for any animal.
Yeah, definitely. The cubs they mirror the mood of mother. So if mother's stressed, the cubs are stressed. If mother is relaxed, they are relaxed. But somebody was wondering, Naomi, what would other bears do if they came across that cub on the island, if they came across that baby bear?
Well, I can bet that they would smell it. I think we have evidence from
One thing that I find fascinating about Brooks River is that it's ever changing. One thing that I find fascinating about Brooks River is that it's ever changing. No one day, week, or year is really ever the same. And we're presented with another example of this on Bearcam this August. Welcome to this latest live chat brought to you by explore.org. And one thing that I find fascinating about Brooks River is that it's ever changing. No one day, week, or year is really ever the same. And we're presented with another example of this. One thing that I find fascinating about Brooks River is that it's ever changing. No one day, week, or year is really ever the same. And we're presented with another example of this on Bearcam this August. Welcome to this latest live chat.
Back.
Okay, can you hear me, Mike? I can hear you.
Yes, absolutely. Sounded good. The sun's coming out on you, so yeah. And it's just about the set here. I'm on the east coast of the United States, so you're going to see it getting darker and darker behind me as we continue. We'll try to. I know there's a bunch of questions that are still in the queue. We'll try to answer those at least. If you're just tuning in, my name is Mike Fitz, the resident naturalist with explore.org, and I am also a former park ranger at Katmai National Park. So I consider myself at least very well versed with the bears, and I'm with Boke, who is stationed at Brooks River this summer. So she's our eyes and ears at Brooks River. And we're talking about a challenging situation to witness, a challenging situation to discuss, and that happens to be perhaps a dying cub in the river. We can't see it on the cameras right now. We could see it earlier in the day, but it was struggling to keep up with its mother, moved to a grassy island in the middle of the river, and it has not emerged from there, even though the rest of the family, the mother and the two cubs, has moved on. Whether the mom comes back or not, we can't say. It wouldn't be surprising for her to stay away. It wouldn't be surprising for her to come back either. So I encourage everyone to watch that lower river camera. And I know the camera operators close attention to that area. So you're going to be able to glean a lot of insights that myself or other staff like Ranger Naomi can't, because Naomi and I have to go to sleep eventually, but there's people all over the world that are going to be watching this camera all night. So please do pay attention and let us know what you see with those observations. Naomi,
Yeah,
sorry, we lost, yeah, we lost you right in the middle of that that answer that you were having. What would so maybe we can get back to that one. What would happen if a bear happened to stumble upon that cub on the island?
Well, I think we have evidence from when 451's cub died. Bear, we saw on the cams, we saw bears walk by it. They would stop, they would smell it, and they would move on. And I suspect that's what would happen in this case. What do you think, Mike?
Yeah, it's hard to say. I think that's a distinct possibility. The bear could just, satisfy its curiosity, be like, oh, that's a cub, and move on. Occasionally we do that. We do see them do that, even with fish too. I've seen brown bears, for example, ignore rainbow trout. They're like, oh, that's not a salmon. It's not of interest to me. So I think it depends on the individual bear, its curiosity level, all those sorts of things. There was a cub killed 2 years ago near the falls, so in summer 2018. And that the body of that cub, it was killed by another bear, and that the body of that cub just sat basically near the riffles platform in the forest, and the bears touched it. A lot of the bears came over, they sniffed it, but other than that, they kind of let it go. And then the deers made quick work of that bear. Yeah, and several other. We're actually kind of we're actually way behind actually when we answered before. But we talked about canine adenovirus, and that was the cause of death of the cub that died in 2015 on camera. We can answer this one quickly though. Naomi, is that virus contagious to the other cubs and other bears?
Yes, it can be. It's not zoonotic as far as I know, so we're not in danger of getting it. But yes, they could pass it along.
And somebody was wondering about competition within the litter, and if a litter of 3 cubs, that means the cubs are competing with one another for food. And Naomi, could being the smallest cub or being a runt of the litter, affect it? Could that be a factor in its energy, and perhaps its susceptibility to illness and maybe slower growth?
It could be. We do know that there's lots of competition when there's more than one cub. And you can see, if you watch the families closely, you can see competing for food, competing for fish, competing for mom's milk. But I always like to say size isn't everything. Our largest bear is not our most dominant bear. And sometimes the smallest cub can be a pretty powerful source. Look at 128 Grazer's smallest cub. I would not want to mess with her when she was a spring cub, and I don't want to mess with her now. So it could be a factor, but sometimes the small ones learn how to fight for what they need, and they survive. So it's a complicated story. Nothing is a yes or no here.
And we're looking at a mother bear on the camera right now, Naomi. That looks, you can confirm this for me. That looks like maybe number 284. She did a little bit of her classic sort of stand up, look around before she went into the river.
Yeah, I think that could be. She's a beautiful bear.
Okay.
Quite a beautiful bear. And she's got 2
And,
spring cubs. And she does look around a lot.
yeah, that's one of her distinctive characteristics, in my opinion. Her mother does that as well, 08. And 708 Amelia is still using the river. So we have multiple generations of bears using the river at the same time. And Amelia has 2 yearlings this year, 2 giant, very fat, healthy-looking yearlings.
Yeah, and you see
Let's see. Let's move
284
on.
standing up.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Naomi.
No, I mean, I just saw 284 standing up, and we always see her mom standing up as well.
And along the lines of a question we asked, actually two related questions to this one that we answered earlier, but slightly different. Somebody was wondering, would there be a concern of another bear consuming the carcass and possibly contacting a disease, or that disease? I mean, it's possible. Again, canine adenovirus is spread through bodily fluids, but I have to be careful to note, and I want everyone to make sure that you understand this. It could be dozens and dozens of other things. So again, the odds of it actually being this virus, we just don't know for sure. So we got a firm answer on that instance when 451's cub died in 2015. It's actually much more likely that we're not going to what ails this cub right now. If it survives, we're not going to know for sure. And if it dies, we may not know before it gets washed away, or another bear decides, hey, this is a potential meal. So yeah, it's possible that if it does have a to a another bear, but yeah, we don't really know what is ailing it right now.
And another observation I would make, and I would ask for the observations of the cam viewers, when did they start to see that cub falter, right? I mean, was it lagging behind for the past couple of days, or was this kind of sudden? I don't know. I came very close to that family two evenings ago when I was walking home, but they were not moving very much. 803 was looking at me and assessing, was I something to worry about or not? So I didn't really get to see the movement of the cubs, but I think this is something that, because you all are watching the cams and watching the movement of these bears all the time, it would be great to know when and if you spotted anything wrong with that cub in the past couple of days.
those can be very valuable observations for the future. You never really know. A lot of diseases show physical symptoms. So if that were the case, if there is a disease ailing this cub right now, then or a parasite or something like that, then those observations can be very valuable. So yeah, we welcome those observations. If you have any notes that you have recorded or anything along those lines. And Naomi, would the mother bear be able to find the cub if it had drowned, if it's under the water? Would the mother bear be able to find it?
Might be. I mean, you know, we don't know. I'm going to preface this as we don't know what happened. If the cub drowned or fell in the water level is low. It's a possibility. I mean, it's a possibility that it could get washed up someplace else, or it could still be on the island. And from what I observed, my suspicion is that that cub is not still on the island. I think that the mother would not have been searching around had that still been on the island. Yeah, it's a possibility, but you know, we just don't know. Just don't know.
And the mother certainly would be able to smell the cub's scent at its last known point. If it is in the water, then the mother could track it to its last known point. I mean, bears live in a world of odor that we can scarcely imagine. Not only is their muzzle and their nasal cavity basically better designed for capturing scent, they have a much greater surface area than humans do for capturing chemicals in the air. So they got that, but they also have a much larger olfactory bulb than us. So they actually devote a lot more brain power to processing that scent. So not only do they have like the physical structures to capture odor, but they also have the brain power to process it as well. So she could, I mean, she could easily come back to that spot and know, hey, well, my cub was here, not and through her own memories of the place, but also as long as that cub happens to or that scent lingers in that area, she'll be able to find it, I think, fairly easily.
Yeah. You have additional
and Naomi,
questions,
I'm not
Mike?
very familiar with. Yeah, a few. I'm not. Do you know much about canine parvovirus? I know you've been a dog owner recently. You own a dog right now who's here at Brooks Camp. I'm sure you miss your puppy. But somebody was asking about canine parvovirus, and can that virus live? It can live for months on surfaces and up to a year in ground soil. They're wondering if that same is similar with bears and other wildlife. I don't know if you can speculate on that. That's definitely what I wouldn't be able to answer.
I don't know. I mean, that's something we'd have to look on. I'm sure there are papers about that, and we could find out about that.
And has anyone noticed? Let's see. Whoop, I skipped ahead of my questions here. Has anyone noticed the bear acting or looking abnormal before today? I unfortunately have not had a really good opportunity to observe this family on the cameras, so I didn't notice anything. Naomi, did any of the staff or yourself, did anything abnormal about that cub until just this afternoon your time?
Not that I know of. But I will ask. As I said, 2 days ago I was within 30 feet of them. I didn't notice anything different. And so they've been traveling around for the last couple of days, but I bet that you cam viewers have seen a lot more than we have, and have a lot more specific information, because we're kind of all over the map and you're focused here on the lower river. So I bet you guys have some information about that.
And this is a question for both of us, Naomi. Sorry, the mosquito. Like you, I also have biting flies in my neighborhood that like to visit me from quite frequently. But this is a question for both of us. So how do we find the strength through these kinds of tragic and emotional events. This person writes, it's so hard to watch. And while you're gathering your thoughts on that, Naomi, I've been looking at that question for a while, so maybe I'll go first. And I will admit, it is difficult to watch. Like I mentioned, when we first went live, or near the point when we first live, I do think that bears experience are very intelligent. They share a lot of characteristics with dogs, so they probably experience pain on similar levels. So it is difficult for me. Things. I try very hard in my own mind to decouple, their experience with my own, and realizing that the best way that I can help them is to try to protect their habitat. Even if there are, what we can perceive to be tragic events, if like a cub dying of an illness or whatever it happens to be, I'm trying to work in my mind to protect these animals in the habitat that they need to survive. And that includes not only the land base, but the water base, and the oceans too, because this population of bears is highly dependent on salmon. So we have to protect the oceans, because salmon live and grow big in the sea. And without healthy oceans, we wouldn't have this population of bears. So it is, for me, it is very difficult to watch. But again, I try to decouple myself emotionally from the lives of the bears, even though it can be very difficult at times. So that's how I try to do it. I know it doesn't always work. There are lots of bears that I see that I love to watch, and I some of the bears that don't come back anymore that I miss very much. But yeah, that's a couple of the ways that I try to get through it.
Yeah, it's difficult. I will not try to hide the fact that it was very difficult to watch what went on this afternoon, because it's such a contrast to the delight of seeing those young cubs bounce around and being taken care of by their moms. But I think what helps me is to gather perspective, both for myself in reminding myself how difficult it is for cubs to survive, and reminding myself how incredible the sows are, how much they do for their cubs, and how much that sow was doing to find its cub, and actually relaying those stories of strength and resiliency to you helps me get through it personally, so that I can share with you as a witness to these stories. And also for me to remember that 2 days ago, I was joyously happy because number 63, 505's cub that was so sick and almost died last year is now back with her family. And and that's just life. I mean, that's life. And what a privilege we have to be able to observe life and death and struggles and success, and that's why nature and able to watch it here on a daily basis is such a privilege and so exciting. So I get through it in that way. Now that doesn't mean I'm not going to go home and shed a few tears when I'm alone in my cabin, but putting things in context helps.
For sure, and sharing this experience with a lot of other people is one way that we can also, sort of process our thoughts and feelings on these situations. Hearing other people's perspectives, for sure. Getting questions from the audience too. I think that really helps me understand the bear world even better. They see the bear world through a different mindset than myself. So all of those things combined are ways that that I am coping. So I invite everyone to sort of participate and share the experience, even though it can be sometimes a difficult one to watch our wildlife cams.
And Mike,
Naomi, somebody
thing.
with oh, go ahead. Sure thing.
I want to say one more observation, which you all could not see, which was being on the bridge. I had asked a lot of visitors to respect the bear family and what was going on, and they did. So sometimes you guys complain a lot, the human behavior you see on the lower river, and I'm going to tell you today there was a lot of very human behavior and respectful human behavior of that sow and those two cubs when they were desperately searching for the that other cub. So something you couldn't see, but I just wanted to let you know. Sometimes human beings are okay.
Well, we need to be reminded of that once in a while, I think.
Once in a while.
Somebody was wondering about carrying capacity in Katmai. This is a follow-up question for me, Naomi. Maybe I'll grab this one. Because I mentioned before that the bear population in Katmai is about at its carrying capacity, or thought to be at its carrying. So even with abundant fish for a few months, does nature eventually take its course and only the strong survive? Yes and no. An abundance of fish can allow bears that maybe wouldn't survive leaner times to get through another winter, for instance. So they can survive that extra year. If that's an older bear, for instance, that doesn't necessarily mean that bear's going to reproduce successfully. So it may have already done so in the past, however. So its genes could have already been, throughout the ecosystem in a different generation. But certainly, having more fish allows more bears the opportunity to survive. And at Brooks River, there's a lot of competition for space, as we've seen, Naomi. But around the rest of Katmai, there are a lot of salmon streams, and bears can disperse into those areas, fishing where they don't have to compete so closely for space like they do at Brooks Falls. Can you tell us a little bit about what bears are going to do towards the end of the month and where they might go to fish?
Sure. Towards the end of the month, when the salmon run is diminishing, the bears will disperse to some of the smaller rivers and the creeks around here, because the water levels are low and the fish are there spawning or spawned out. So that's why a lot of times we don't see as many bears here in August, although the last few years we've had some silver salmon runs here that have lasted into August, which have kept bears here. Last year in particular, the water level was very low because it was so dry all summer, and it was literally catching fish in a barrel. The streams were so jam-packed with salmon. So there's a lot of fishing around here that's not in brooks, and I think that given the amount of salmon we're seeing here, I think there are some bears there right now. Mike?
Yeah, for sure. The salmon are dispersing throughout the watershed right now, so bears are going to take advantage of those opportunities. And one of our technicians from explore.org actually passed on some information to me about canine parvovirus, and she says it's not zoonotic, so it's a dog-only disease.
Here she comes.
Go
She's
ahead,
back,
Naomi.
and she's chasing off the adult. Explorer might want to show the lower river cam. She's back with her two cubs and just chased off the subadult that was in the lower river. So if you go the cam more towards the island and less towards the spit, that would be great. I don't know if you can move it at this point, but she'll be in view in just a second.
Okay. So that's a great info to have. That's one of the things that the advantage of being on the ground there. You can swivel your head much quicker than a vehicle.
Right. Yeah, she's now out by the island. I think there's a lag in terms of what you're seeing, and you'll see her go onto the island.
Yeah, probably what Naomi is seeing and what you are seeing on the webcams at home. There's probably a 30-second to 40-second delay on that. That signal just has to, it travels, out of Brooks River sort of at the speed of sound, but the computers still have to process it. The servers still have to process it. So there's a few bits of magic that have to happen before you can see it at home. And now, Naomi, while we're
She's
waiting for the mother to appear, please go ahead.
no, she you will see her you'll see her go around, went on the downriver side of the island. Now she's gonna spit. Here, now you see her
Okay.
coming in where she's going. And right currently she's on the spit. She's still looking for that cub.
Yeah, reach ups,
Now
looking and maybe following the scent trail that cub had left earlier. Again, bears have an incredible sense of smell, so they're very easily, or they're able to follow scent very easily. And scent's a remarkable tool for these animals and for humans. We know odor. It is it's a sense, our sense of smell allows us to go beyond the immediate. Like our eyes, our ears, they're like immediate senses. Once the light passes by us, we can't get it back. But odors linger in the environment for much longer periods of time. So it really does allow bears, in a sense, to do almost a little bit of detective work if they want to, by following odors from place to place. And Naomi, are you still with us? Maybe the vMix crash again. If you Okay, so I'm still live. All right. Again, this is spur of the moment, very impromptu, everybody. So I appreciate everyone's patience and ability to stick with us even through some of our technical difficulties. We are doing our best to try to interpret these situations for you. I think we'll try to get Naomi back here in just a moment. But when the cameras did transition to highlights for a little bit, so there's probably just sometimes there's buffering in the system, and she is on the bear cam signal, the same signal that sends the webcam out of Brooks River, and there are no outside utilities that reach that place, no roads, no power lines or anything like that. So everything has to get sent up through a wireless signal on top of Dumpling Mountain, which you can see very well in the Riverwatch camera, and then it gets sent to King Salmon and then to the rest of the internet from there. We'll try to get Naomi back. However, while we're waiting, oh, there you are. Okay, I was just about to get to the next question, Naomi.
Okay. So I just say that
So, somebody,
before
go ahead.
that she is coming back towards us, and the cubs are kind of hanging on her. She's looking back and forth. I just think this is something we're going to be seeing for a while. So you guys are you're our eyes here, because you'll be here a lot longer tonight than I will.
For sure, yeah. This is, I think, definitely going to be a prolonged experience. It's 8:25 p.m. And I've been basically staring at the webcams and staring at my computer since 5 p.m. doing bear cam work, and then this came up. So eventually I'm going to have to take my eyes off it, but I'm very appreciative that everyone else is still going to be watching. Naomi, we do have a few extra questions.
Okay, go ahead.
Is she coming towards you now? Why don't you describe what you're seeing for us? But keep in mind our view is about 40 seconds. What you were seeing.
Yeah, she walked right below me. I'm on the east lower river platform, and she is headed towards the Y, maybe out towards the Valley Road with her cubs right now. Still looking around. So you know, as you said, this is going to go on for a while. She'll be coming back and forth, I'm sure, a lot. And you have another question?
Yeah, we had a few more, and I think we'll try to take these maybe before we call it an evening uh, or an
Yeah.
afternoon, depending on where you happen to be. You know, we one person was wondering about whether a mother bear would pick up a cub when it's in trouble. You know, sometimes would they do something like that? You know, sometimes bear mothers, if a cub is acting stubborn, I haven't seen it with brown bears at Brooks River, but with other bear species, I've seen footage of a mother bear picking its cub up by the scruff of its neck and sort of dragging it along when it doesn't cooperate. So it's possible. Um, I don't know if you've seen anything different, Naomi, but I haven't seen it without brown bears, but I certainly wouldn't discount the possibility.
Yeah, I mean, we do know that sometimes they help them out. I mean, there's the 89 backpack story where Holly helped out her injured cub. But when the family groups are swimming around here in the lower river, the mothers are concentrating on finding fish, and they're basically teaching their cubs how to keep up and how to fish. I mean, for example, you watch Holly, and she's a tough taskmaster with her cub. That cub has to keep up, and so it may take a while for a sow to realize that one of her cubs is not really keeping up, because she's trying to fish so that she can survive, and then therefore her cubs can survive, and she may not realize early on that she's got a cub that's not keeping up with her.
And somebody was wondering, Naomi, what do you think happened from the time you last saw the cub on the island to when you didn't see it? Were you able to what were you observing at that moment when the cub moved over to the island?
When I first saw it, it was just standing there on the edge of the island, kind of waiting for mom to come back. And then it moved behind some grass and I couldn't see it. And that was the last I saw it. I never saw it again.
And if the cub is still on the island, would the mother bear fight other bears off of that island? Would that be one way to tell whether the cub is still alive and present in that area? Potentially, mother bears are famously defensive, some more so than others. But I think that's a distinct possibility if she's around. Of course, she has to stick to the island. She has to be in that vicinity. She's not going to go 400 yards upstream, and any bear that wanders by, she's not going to come charging down the river. So she'd have to be in the immediate vicinity, I think. But Naomi, you did see her chase that young subadult off of that area just a few moments ago.
Yeah, because I mean, even though she probably can't find her cub right now, the last time she saw her cub was on that island. And she saw a subadult near that island and she chased it away. So she's, you're not going there. She's still protective of that place. So we'll have to see. We'll have to watch what she does next.
And just a couple more questions that we have here. I think maybe before we wrap things up, we'll both get a drink of water for our voice boxes, that sort of thing. In the event that a decision was made to recover the cub, is that something that might be affected by the park's capabilities during the COVID outbreak? Naomi, can you tell us a little bit maybe about that and some of the staffing challenge the National Park Service in Katmai is experiencing right now?
Yeah, well, we have about half the normal staff that we do normally at this time. And that's mainly because of housing, because for being safe on other people in COVID, most people are, instead of sharing cabins, are living on their own. And we also needed to keep space open in case someone did get sick so that person could be isolated. And we are keeping any contractors or people who are doing research or work out here in separate facilities. So we're being as careful as we can. So that limits the number of people we have here. I think that if we thought that the cub was on that island and that it had died and there was a possibility of retrieving, I think that bear management would try to find a way to retrieve it. That's just a good guess because I think it would be important information to know what happened to that cub. And I think there would be the resources to do that. It just depends on how to be able to do it safe with all the bears around.
Yeah, I agree with that. And if the cub does die, if it is recoverable, really, it wouldn't be an elegant collecting it, but someone probably would just put on a pair of fishing waders and walk out to the grassy spot if it's there, assuming it's there, assuming it's dead, and just put a bag, and then take it somewhere where it could be put in a cool, chilled, and sent off so it doesn't decompose too much before analysis. So yeah, there's enough staff there, I think, certainly, to take on that task. But again, the National Park Service this summer is definitely facing a lot of challenges. I know it's very tempting for a lot of people to visit national parks this year. Some people have some more free time. But if you are going to national parks, do please be very careful, not only for yourself, but for the staff that is there as well. So bring a mask along. If you're going to be in close contacts with people, please, wear that mask. Naomi is wearing her green mask. It's a great look. It matches the uniform, of course. And especially if you're going to Brooks River too, because you're going to be on walkways very close to people. You're going to be on platforms very close to people. So take those precautions. COVID-19 is not going away anytime soon. And if we're going to move around a bit more freely this summer, we have an extra responsibility, I think, to keep ourselves and others around us safe. One more question, Naomi, here. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say,
I keep cutting you off, but please go ahead.
That's right. We have this lag that I read someone say that not wearing a mask is like driving drunk. You do harm to yourself and to others. So we really ask that you all, if you get to come here this summer, be respectful of those people who are working here to keep this place as beautiful and wonderful as it is, and other national parks as well. A lot of rangers and park staff working to keep the parks intact and healthy.
And our final question: if the cub was still on the island for the mother to see, would her behavior be any different? Something that we could notice? I think she would pay attention to the island frequently. Eventually she's going to stop paying attention to it. It's hard to say. Again, we don't know very much about 803. Any thoughts on that, Naomi?
I think you're right about that. I think she did have another litter before, Mike, so we could look at her history there. Obviously, she's concerned. But obviously she's concerned. But she has the concern of her living spring cubs, the cub with her. So we'll see. I ask that you guys be our eyes and ears and watch on the cams and let us know what's going on. And Mike, you have a live chat tomorrow with Ranger Brooklyn, and maybe we'll have to answer some more questions then.
Yeah, Rick is salmon, but we'll see, what happens in the meantime. So I hope everyone tunes in for that at 3 p.m. Eastern time tomorrow, right here on the live chat channel. But if you joined us late, I hope you found Naomi and my answers to your questions insightful. We're learning along with you. To kind of recap what happened. There was a mother bear and her 3 cubs at the mouth of Brooks River not too long ago, about a couple hours ago, that seemed to, and one of the cubs showed some signs of distress, couldn't follow mom, was having a hard time keeping up. It moved to a grassy island in the middle of the river. We haven't really seen it emerge from there, while the mother and her other 2 cubs have moved on. So we're still waiting to see what happens. It's an ongoing, developing story, as they say, I guess, in the news world. So please pay attention to the cameras, and share resources that you find out, you know, with each other in the chat. I think that's very helpful for everyone to spread the word. If anyone's tuning in later tonight, they'll be able to watch this replay on the rewind on this channel, as long as you find the right time signature, for about the next 12 hours or so. So you can always refer people back to this. But again, my name is Mike Fitz with explore.org. I'd like to thank everyone for joining me today. And Naomi, thanks so much for jumping online and helping